A class created for one purpose, but finding its way with a completely different one. The Magee class would both inspire and confuse the citizens of the United Federation of Planets. But what's the story behind this very unusual class? Well, today we'll find out. Hello and welcome to another episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon, a Star Trek web series that dives into the history of any given topic using beta canon sources and my own imagination to fill in the gaps. In today's episode, we're taking a look at the Magee class, as first seen in Star Trek Discovery to better understand its place in Star Trek history. Please note, there isn't really a lot of information on this class, but I've done my best to weave a cogent narrative with the little tidbits I did have. Also, there has been some debate as to how to pronounce the class's name. Like most of you out there, I originally thought it was pronounced Maggie, like Maggie Simpson. But in reality, it's actually pronounced Magee, having been named after the World War II Canadian pilot John Magee Jr., author of the famous aviation poem High Flight. And as always, because this is a beta canon video, all information relayed should pretty much be taken with a grain of stardust, and only considered a little bit of Star Trek fun. And so, with all that out of the way, let's begin. The early 23rd century had brought with it a flood of new saucer-style starship designs. Classes such as the Daedalus and Wasp class were quickly becoming a thing of the past, as new starships like the Malachowski and Walker classes were quickly taking the forefront of the fleet. With these starship successes came Starfleet's desire for more. The Malachowski and Walker classes were great in their own mission profiles. But now, Starfleet wanted a compact starship design for defensive and offensive duties, while simultaneously being easily constructed. And the answer to this desire by Starfleet's starship design team was the Magee class. Sitting at a length of 225.2 meters and 8 decks tall, the Magee class was designed to be operated by 100 officers and crew members. Breaking with the traditional designs of the time, the Magee class would include its warp nacelles as part of the primary hull. Up to this point in history, most starship designs had their nacelles extended beyond the starship on specially designed pylons. This was due to the delta radiation which all warp coils expelled, making this an absolute necessity. By the early 23rd century, however, this was no longer a concern. Starfleet scientists had discovered a Victrium alloy, which effectively blocked delta radiation. The problem was, to synthesize this alloy was an exhaustive task, taking far longer time than what one would hope, making fleet-wide use of this alloy impractical. But for use on a single starship class, that was another story. By reconfiguring the warp coils slightly and shielding the starship with this Victrium alloy meant that the Magee class could indeed have its nacelles as part of its hull, considerably cutting down construction time. The Magee class would have a standard safe cruising speed of warp factor 4, with an emergency theoretical speed of warp factor 6. Tactically speaking, the Magee class was well equipped for a ship of its size, containing 8 dual phaser cannon emitters and 2 photon torpedo launchers, 1 forward and 1 aft. Shielding for this class was standard for the time, and a small underslung deflector dish was also more than adequate for this starship's need. A single small shuttle bay, located in the aft section of the saucer, provided auxiliary spacecraft for any mission where the transporter would not operate or was inappropriate for use. Construction on the USS Magee was slow going because of its Victrium requirements. But in 2214, the starship was finally launched. Unfortunately, it did not perform as well as its starship design team intended. Because this was before Duotronic and its accompanying technology was invented, This starship class relied on more traditional computer tech. And with Starfleet's original high expectations of it being a powerful fighter-style class, the Magee Class simply failed, as the technology for such a starship design simply did not exist yet. At extreme combat maneuvers, circuit burnouts and computer failures made this class's mission profile unattainable, and try as they might, its design team was unable to solve these underlying issues. Although disappointed, Starfleet did see the potential in the class, however, as in standard operations along with normal combat maneuvers, the Magee class performed quite well. And instead of scrapping the design, the decision would be made to simply alter the Magee class's mission profile to one of a short-range scientific starship class. And after an extensive internal refit and redesign, in early 2216, the Magee class would be launched for its shakedown cruise once again, this time blowing the expectation for its mission profile out of the water. And with its exceptional performance, Starfleet Command would commission the class. From that point on, the Magee class would be assigned extensive scientific missions, such as system and planetary surveys as well as experimental research projects. And although no longer a combat class, it would indeed find itself in several combat situations, again performing well above Starfleet's and the Federation's expectations. But even after receiving several overhauls during its lifetime, by the end of the 2250s, the decision would be made to begin to decommission the class, as newer, more powerful starship designs began to supplant the old guard. And by 2272, the last of the Magee class starships would find themselves in decommissioned shipyards all across the Federation. This would not be the end of the class's story, however, as over 100 years later, during the Romulan crisis, the class would receive a reprieve of sorts. In order to evacuate Romulus and its surrounding star systems before the Romulan sun went supernova, Starfleet began to toy with the idea of pulling old starships out of its decommissioned shipyards, giving them a complete update and sending them off to the blast zone to help ferry various civilizations to safety. And in 2385, 2 starships of the Magee class had been chosen as test vessels for this idea. Of course, on April 5th, 2385, the synth attack of Mars would devastate the Federation and destroy the entire fleet at Utopia Planitia, including these 2 Magee class test starships. Admiral Jean-Luc Picard, in charge of the entire evacuation of Romulus and its surrounding space, then came up with a new plan based on these test starships. Admiral Picard would petition Starfleet and the Federation Council to pull all starships out of mothball and give them a quick refit and send them off to Romulus. Unfortunately, due to rising tensions over the synth attack and strong opposition to help the Romulans from several Federation member worlds, the Council and Starfleet would reject Picard's plan and withdraw their assistance from the Romulus evacuation project. Yet still, this would not mean the end of the Magee class, as Starfleet saw merit in Picard's idea of quickly refitting these old starships and pressing them into service. With 2/3 of their fleet badly damaged or destroyed during the synth attack, Starfleet and the Federation felt vulnerable. So, taking this aspect of the Admiral's plan, Starfleet would augment their own fleet with these older starship designs until newer starships and classes could be constructed to replace them. As a result, 14 Magee-class vessels, including the USS Magee herself, would begin a new life, serving the Federation until 2398, when they would once again begin to decommission the class in favor of the mass-produced Inquiry class. Created with one purpose in mind, but not making its mark until its mission profile was completely changed, The Magee class would go on to have a career and lifespan as unusual as its own design, earning this class its distinctive place in Starfleet history. Thank you for watching today's episode of Truth or Myth Beta Canon. What do you think of the Magee class and the historical narrative that I've created here? Do you want to see more videos like this one? Well, leave your comments in the section below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, hitting that little bell icon so you won't miss a single video we release. Want to help give the channel a quick refit and upgrade so it can get out there and augment the fleet? Then consider becoming a channel patron. The link to our Patreon account is in the description below. Thanks again for watching. Live long and prosper.